Welcome back again, Virtual Circuit Riders. This is Dr. Daniel. Now that we have passed through the formation of the Methodist Episcopal Church at the Christmas conference, we look now to the development of the church, in particular forms of leadership and governance that were found important to give structure to the rapidly growing movement of itinerant preachers. The life and ministry of Francis Asbury as bishop from Christmas conference onward really coheres and sets the scene for and sets precedents for leadership that we still live with today in the episcopacy. We were formed as the Methodist Episcopal Church, the Christmas conference. Therefore, what the episcopacy should mean theologically and in terms of polity still needed to be worked out, and Asbury begins to consolidate his power very, very early. We can see in 1786 John Wesley attempted to appoint Richard Watcote as a co-bishop with Asbury, and Asbury was able, through his overseeing of multiple conferences, able to defeat Wesley's power and reconsolidate his own power as truly the singular episcopal appointment-making leader. Also, during this period, immediately after the Christmas conference, Bishop Coke begins to become more interested in foreign missions as a representative of the British Wesleyans, partly because he was interested in mission and was passionate about it, but also he could see that Asbury had really consolidated power and retained the power of appointment and knew the and ran annual conferences in multiple locations without much consultation. So Coke could see that his future really lay along a different horizon. And so Coke is marginalized step by step, which includes, by 1791, we have in some of our primary documents, Thomas Coke began some secret back channel letter writing to the new bishop, the Bishop White of the Protestant Episcopal Church. The Episcopalians now have a bishop in America, and Coke begins discussions perhaps to bring Methodism back into union with the Episcopal Church. The bishop is open to this, the Episcopal Bishop White, but word gets to Asbury of this back channel discussion, and it angers him greatly. And from that point onward, indicates in the conference minutes that Coke is not to exercise any episcopal authority unless he's on the ground in America. So this effectively cuts off any further reunion talks, and Asbury is the sole bishop, resisting Wesley's attempt to control, by remote control, if you will, America through other appointments. So we have a fully realized high Asburyan episcopacy at this point, which is based largely on his charisma and ability to read the gifts and graces of his preachers, and also his example of traveling perhaps up to 6,000 miles per year, preaching more than 16,000 sermons over a 45-year ministry. This earned him the title of the prophet of the long road. We can see in his life story, his travels took him throughout the eastern part of the U.S., and from 1784 onward, he met in multiple geographical annual conferences. This is sometimes called the Baltimore Conference System, which meant that he had to meet conference after conference, and most of his travels, in particular to Georgia and South Carolina and throughout the New England areas, were done to appoint pastors in annual conferences that were developing regionally, and also to ordain pastors for those regions as well. You can see here the dates of each present state that Asbury was able to move into. You can see beyond the Allegheny and Appalachian Mountains. He is the first American bishop to travel, traveling often through the Cumberland Gap here. The difficulty of his travels are from time to time noted in his diaries here. You can see his travels largely took him across similar paths in early American life. There weren't as many roads. There was the Wilderness Road and the Coastal Road, and he often saw settlers using these roads and settling. He believed that his work in encouraging the pastors to go along with settlements often ran alongside rivers, and you can see here the names of many of the early circuits have names of rivers. The settlement patterns were important, the demographics, and Asbury believed that the first sound after a settlement was created should be the sound of the circuit rider greeting the new settlers in the name of the gospel of Jesus Christ and as representatives of the Methodist Church sent by Bishop Asbury. You can see this is 1790 here, and these already show the circuits going from Georgia through the Holston region of Tennessee, all through the Virginia Tidewater, North Carolina Tidewater area, and up into as far north as Boston as well. It was a winding road. His life was always on the road. He had no home. He saw Baltimore as sort of his central hub, and nevertheless there is no home for Asbury that we see there in Baltimore. The only home associated with Bishop Asbury is his boyhood home in Great Barr, Britain, not too far from the Birmingham region. You can see here there's a little museum in this house that was his boyhood home. When he went to America, he was just 2 weeks shy of his 26th birthday, and spent the next 45 years in America, traveling, knowing its roads better than perhaps any man in America. So his preaching took him beyond the Alleghenies here, into the northwestern territories and into the Kentuck or the Kentucky region, as well as Tennessee, a number of years before these became states. And so Asbury's work was to stir up and to get the preachers out from center to circumference, as he often observed. Asbury believed that the Methodist preaching body should be a wheel within a wheel, always extending and moving throughout the settlement patterns, and this caused him to be on the road throughout his ministry, upwards of 270,000 miles, to preach mostly, but also to convene conferences. He was fond of quoting this sentence: "There's nothing like the itinerant ministry for keeping the whole body alive from the center to the circumference, and for the continual extension of that circumference on every hand." So after the war, Methodism moved, and while it was confined largely east of the Allegheny and Appalachians in 1784, we've seen by 1800 most of the circuits had been linked in the growing territories west of the mountain and chain, Allegheny and Appalachians, and Asbury set the Methodist movement to growing westward in America because it would go westward with America. He saw settlers on the Cumberland Gap and going down the Ohio River, and always charged his preachers to be on the same paths, to put the gospel in place wherever settlements were emerging. The difficulty of overseeing this widening body of preachers, however, meant that by about 1792, it was no longer possible for Asbury to oversee all the multiple annual conferences in each region, and so a number of plans come to fruition to try to provide governance and to spread the governance out beyond Asbury's need and the burden of overseeing all these conferences. So a plan came out. A council plan was evolved and put forward by the preachers, that a council to be elected by the body of preachers would assist in putting together policy, and Asbury was against this council plan. He felt that at the very least it should be a hand-picked council, sort of a type of cabinet approach. But this council plan was ultimately defeated roundly in the annual conferences, and so a call for a general conference was put together for Methodism to meet every 4 years to do business on a national level. So in 1792, Asbury and the body of preachers met in Baltimore for what was the first general conference. Asbury was generally against this general conference as erosion of his power, but the preachers voted. Coke wanted the general conference as an efficient body. But there was one man, a man named James O'Kelly, a leader in the Virginia area, who was against Asbury's power. He believed that Asbury had gained too much power, and so wanted not only a general conference to defeat Asbury, but also he argued in this first general conference for the right of appeal for poor appointments. And he argued that without that right of appeal, the democratic spirit of America would not be represented in American Methodism, and that the Methodists would have a pope, that they had gone too far into popery through Asbury. Well, the vote was taken and the right of appeal was defeated. Asbury still remained in firm charge of the appointments, but James O'Kelly took about 20% of the preachers who were the more democratic and walked out at the first general conference, thereby splitting the general conference at the very first duly constituted general conference. And so there's been tendencies to fear general conference splitting ever since. So there was never an era of clear vision on how the episcopacy should go. There was controversy, contested visions, but Asbury's strong, high episcopal model emerges from 1792, and thereafter we've had the somewhat modifying character of the General Conference as a counterbalance to strong episcopal power. And so the pendulum swings back and forth every generation between the powers of bishops and General Conference, but the General Conference policies are made by the body of preachers in a democratic way as representatives. In this first General Conference, all preachers were invited, but by 1808 it was necessary to have a delegated General Conference. But you can see Asbury's power has left its mark, and the General Conference concept continues today to be one that causes various notions of power from time to time and the fear of power.